Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and I am joined by Brian of Beyond the Locker Room, whose social media handles I'm going to be putting down below in the description. So definitely check him out at the end. Hopefully, you like, comment, and subscribe to this channel as well as his, and support us both. And also, hopefully, you enjoy this video. Today I'm joined by Beyond to basically talk about a couple interesting topics. But off the top, we're going to be talking probably about development. Before we get into development, I have a simple question for you, which is this. With the benefit of hindsight, what do you think of the Poeltl acquisition?
I think it has improved us defensively a lot faster than I thought it would. I thought we would get there eventually, but it was pretty instantaneous, which really it really does not make the management look great in this case. Considering we've been looking for a center, for a quality center for about 3 years, and the deal with this situation and the fact that within like a game or two you saw the instant results of it. I think I saw a stat
Yeah.
last night's game where like since the acquisition we're like top 10 in defense. I think we're ranked eighth in the stats, which is like whoa. I didn't think it was that good at the point, but like, yeah. I still have concerns about it offensively when it comes to spacing. I'm not sold on that side of the ball just yet, but overall, I gotta say it's a plus.
I mean, if he could hit his free throws like last night, that obviously
That guy
will.
got lost in the shuffle, huh?
It's like, okay, well, he can, if he could actually hit free throws, that helps a lot. I'm not a huge believer in the PER stat, the player efficiency rating, but what's interesting is on the year he's been pretty good, 21, which is as a solid number. But since coming to Toronto, his PER I checked earlier today, and it was equal to Luca's.
Wow. Well, a lot less touches.
Yeah, with a lot less touches. I mean, some people I'm sure would argue for a higher amount of usage. I'm not necessarily arguing for that, but I do think that he has had a significant impact. And I mean, it's crazy. Some of the stats that you look at, some of the on and off stats that you look at, are absolutely just crazy. I mean, I'm trying to think. It was something like we had a 100 or close to a 100 defensive rating with him on the court last night against the Wizards. And whenever this comes out, it's probably not going to be tomorrow, but just so people are aware. Versus with him off the court, I think it was 140 as a defensive rating. So, first of all, I guess the real question is what happened to our defense since he's been here? I mean, overall, it's improved, but I thought Precious was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to be the linchpin.
I'm sure you've seen me on Twitter. I've had my questions about Mr. Achua lately.
Yes.
It's been an interesting discussion. I guess my mindset with Achua is I guess it comes down to the first thing with Achua. Do you see him as a back like a small ball five, or do you see him as a wing? And I think that will tell me a lot exactly where you think he should be positioned on this team, because I've always been of the mindset that he's a wing, kind of masquerading as a five. In a pinch, could you play him a small ball five? Yes, you could do so. But I don't see him as a long term solution as a backup five for us if that's what we're looking to do. And I think at some point you gotta start figuring out what you're gonna do at that spot. Obviously, the most obvious answer would be is the development of Koloko. So I think to me that's my biggest concern. And then I think also with Achua, just personally, I think what you're seeing him, he's had the biggest impact in this case negatively with the Poeltl acquisition, because I think
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But if you watch enough hoops over the years, you kind of get a sense when a guy seems like they're sulking a little bit. It feels that way with him a little bit. That he got pulled out of the starting lineup. Obviously, he would, but it's one of those things where it's one thing when you think it's going to happen, it's another thing when it does happen, and he really
Right.
hasn't been the same player really since he went back to the bench.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, basketball is like this, where some guys, it doesn't matter where they are, they'll put up the same production. I know people are suggesting that GTJ is kind of slumping now on the bench, but in general, like I just think he's
Good.
just, I think it's just a streak thing.
Right.
If you look at his numbers on and off the bench aside from his like, you know, standardizing for the streakiness. I think that in general, GTJ puts up almost identical numbers or similar numbers, whereas a guy like Precious, you know, it's almost like Norm. For whatever reason, Norm he used to struggle off the bench for the longest time. He'd be great in the starting lineup, and then over time, his bench production got up pretty good. But then it was almost like you don't have anyone better, but like you need him on the bench, and yeah, it's a whole thing. So I think from that standpoint, it's interesting. I don't try to become one of these body language doctor type people. If it's obvious, I'll make a comment about it. I haven't been doing as many game recaps as of late, but one of the things that I did notice is that from an IQ, basketball IQ specifically standpoint, Precious seems to struggle with his decision making. I haven't really seen growth in that area. Now, I will say one thing. He's a third year player.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, do you because it's you know almost to tease out that development side of things. In my opinion, that's one of the hardest things to improve.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a ceiling from that standpoint? Because defensively, he has shown not just in spurts, but on a relatively regular basis that he can do it. But
It
yeah,
it's funny you mention that because I think between the two, I think when you look at the defensive aspect of him, he's good in certain matchups. If he's playing against actually bigs and post players, he's actually very good. I do question him. I think overall, even with smaller players, I don't think he's that bad. But when you
yep,
get a big wing that can be mobile, he's shown the last couple of weeks is not really a great matchup for him. He doesn't seem to move his feet as well. Saw it with Bogdanovich. He had all sorts of trouble with Kuzma last night. And I'm just watching to see if this is a prototype that he struggles with in this case here. And I'm curious to see how that plays out long term because that does work against my theory about if he's a wing or not. Because if he can't guard wings, we got a problem. He's too small to play as a center, a small ball center. He's kind of like a bit of a mishmash overall of he's kind of like he has shortcomings in both spots if that's the case. And then he ends up being almost a spot player, which is what you don't expect him to be in the future. But I do question a little bit about his growth. You know, I think with him, when it comes to development, I think it starts with the skill set. You got to develop the skill set first and get that down because trying to develop and get a guy to make better decisions, you're going to eventually get to that. But if he doesn't have the skill set down, I think it doesn't matter at that point because if you can't shoot, it doesn't matter in this case what his
yeah.
decision is.
Yeah, I
So
mean it's tough. And to answer your question, I think Nick actually pointed this out as he kind of said, you know, he wants to see him more on fours. And that gives you a
mm-hmm.
hint. I think
Right.
it's almost like the year of Tampa when I said from the get-go, I don't think that Boucher is a five. And everyone was like, oh no, he's a five. And I'm like, this man is not a five. And by
Mm-hmm.
the end, I think the last press conference, it was like, yeah, well, we found out that, you know, like he's not, you know, he's not this, he's not that. So, but he is a four. So, you know, obviously I've told you and I've expressed that I think that there's a bit of redundancy between him and Boucher long term. But yeah, if he's going to be a wing from an offensive standpoint, he can obviously dribble. I'm not, you know, expecting him to go one on one and break dudes down all the time, but he can definitely, you know, he can dribble pretty well and he has the athleticism. I think that he needs to now start learning when is the optimal time. Okay, I've tried my first move, my counter. Now it's time to swing it out and at least reset the play. I think if you can get that, that will be a very, very big thing for his
See,
development.
well, this is interesting. This came back to a discussion I had just the other night. Maybe it was right after the game last night, about with some other Raptor fans on discussing when it comes to development, right? Like, how do you proceed, right? It's either do you give everyone freewheeling and let them have freedom to explore, or do you give some folks defined rules, say you just do this well at first, and then once you get that down, we'll layer on top of it. Nick tends to be in this case more the former than the latter. And there's advantages to that, you know, but there's also disadvantages to that. And I think we're seeing a lot of that play out now with some of the younger players. where it's like there's not enough role definition, and you're seeing guys in this case in certain possessions just taking some really ungodly shots they have no business taking, but no one's really been telling them, to pull back the reins, like, hey, this is what your role should be. And I think it's coming, it's kind of the chicken's coming home to roost a little bit at the moment with that. So it is part of a strategy from a development standpoint. Everyone's a little different. I remember having discussions last night about this, comparing like the way Casey ran younger players versus him. I think Casey's much more of a by the numbers. You do this, paint in this box. Once you're finished painting that box, then we'll see if you can do box B. Right? That was the way Casey kind of ran his ship. While Nick is kind of more freewheeling. Oh, let the guys just flow and read and react. Yeah. It's like it's all out here. It's all ethereal, and we just play it.
I mean, that's really, and I think so. We were discussing this the other day a little bit, and this is perfect segue into the overall development. So this is going to turn some people off because some people hate Siakam. Okay, but Siakam's development is an anomaly, and yet one of the ways I think beyond his first year, in his first year, he was mainly transition buckets and anything else that he could get from rebounds or whatever, that's it. But beyond that, it was just, after that year, they started really ramping up his production and giving him a lot of stuff to do. So I guess my question is, what is the best type of pathway? Because you look, in terms of development, you look at, not every single player can be Pascal number one. I think I've seen so many people say, well, Pascal's this age and this guy's this age, and if you had 3 years, he's just, and it's like, no, there's a lot to it. There's the way that a guy moves on the court. There's his balance. I'm not trying to call anyone out. I'm just trying to say there's a lot of factors that go into it. Plus, there is the factor of, some people have mentioned it, and it's hard to tell, and I'm not accusing anyone of not working, but there is a certain amount of work that is required, not just to get in to the league, but then, okay, now guys are scouting me. Now guys know what to do. Exactly. And so now you need to, you have diminishing returns to the marginal utility of your work. So to get that extra little bit, you now have to work 3 times as hard, and it exponentially just continues and continues. I'm not saying that we don't have workers on this team, but more so just to bring it full circle back to the original point, what is the best way? Because you have guys like Magic Johnson, and, Magic did everything in his first couple years.
Right.
Is that the right path, or should we kind of go back to here's your role card, sir?
I think it depends on the type of player you have, right? If you're asking a player who's used to being in a particular type of role, and you use Magic Johnson's example, for him to carry out what he did in Los Angeles from the time of Michigan State, that was a role he knew him in college. In every role that Magic Johnson was in, he was always that guy. So it was nothing new for him when he got to Los Angeles to be inserted in that position. That's the role he was born to play for the pretty much the time he was born in this case here. So, but then when you have other players, and the Raptors have a lot of players like this, we don't have a lot of guys on this team that are what we call blue chippers, that came out with a mindset: I am the dude. I know how to carry myself. I have the skill set to do this, this, and this. We have a lot of guys that were like coming from, quote, humble beginnings, in this case, to be in the roles there are. And how you deal with them, you got to kind of understand their personas in this case, how they deal with it. I don't think no one in this case doesn't work hard. Heck, I'll never buy into that, because like, for you to make the NBA, you better had to work pretty hard to get in the NBA. Okay, so this idea is like, oh, guys aren't working hard. No, I think it's more to do with I think my theory is more to do with the actual discipline in this case of how they work.
Yeah.
Right? So you take someone like DeRozan, and so Jakob's very similar in this sense. They take certain components of their game and they focus on that, at a certain time, in their development. Okay, you remember DeRozan doing literally dribbling skills around pylons, and we used to see him in the summer. That was summer, it was that. And then next year it was footwork, and it was this, it was that. Block by block, right? Siakam's in some way. I think other players sometimes get hung up on is that they're practicing all sorts of things and doing everything at once, instead of just focusing on getting something they could get down that they think could give them advantage in this particular campaign, and use that as a weapon. Instead, they kind of do a bit of everything. And then what ends up happening is when time comes, when the bigger bright lights on, there's nothing you can really trust or rely on fully because you never really, you haven't really focused on one particular skill set. Let's put it that way. That's my theory.
Right.
I'm not saying they're not working, but I think it's more of like how you address the development in this case here, how you attack it.
And I bring up the work thing not because I think that all of them work really hard, especially on this team. I mean, you hear like all these guys like Precious, Scottie, everyone in the summer is just like busting their tail to do it. So I just mainly bring it up because like you hear certain media members or whatever, or there's been a conversation about it, and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
I don't
right,
really like it because that's just me. Unless
right,
I see otherwise, like sometimes there are players that will admit like hey, I was lazy.
right,
Okay,
right.
fair enough.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's working
I,
hard and working smart, and I think that that's
yeah,
what you're getting at.
that's exactly the best way of phrasing it. Yeah, and I think sometimes because I think that's a kind of a label is put on players more in the past, where yeah, guys weren't doing stuff in the off season. Only the top dudes that would do so, but a lot of other guys be just like, yo, I'm going to wherever, Cuba or
Yeah.
wherever the heck they're going to. They're like, they're done, right? And you probably know some of them old school dudes are like, I'm good, man. And I'll work my way into shape in the regular season and preseason. I'll get there. Guys are in shape all year round now. Guys are
Yep.
playing all the time, and there's maybe an argument that we've had in the past and discussion about are they playing too much? And going to some of the injury discussions we've had offline ourselves or amongst ourselves, is there too much playing? The problem is, so that's a whole
Yeah.
other discussion, right? So,
I
I
mean,
think
you haven't really. I don't think you follow it super close. I don't either, but AAU I think is something that has done a huge disservice to a lot of these kids. I'm hearing they're playing, 4 or 5 games a week sometimes, and then some. And it's like you come to the NBA and they're like, oh well, he hasn't played that many NBA
right,
minutes, and then it's like, well, actually, he's played the equivalent of like a full like he's put an extra 10 years worth of work and exercise on his body. And so like
right,
that's one of the things that I always worry about with a lot of these kids. I mean, having tendonitis or whatever at such a young age or
and
serious arthritis concerns.
right. You see how many ACL injuries happen to guys at such young ages. I just saw the ticker come across today about Jonathan Isaac. Right, the guy's not even 24 or 25 yet, and
Yeah.
like
Well, I guess there's no Fred trade then for
yeah, yeah, cross
I'm
my mind.
just kidding.
Yeah. SAT is done in this case. But you're sitting around going
Yeah.
like, wow, it's like, I mean, there's possibilities. Like, what's this guy's career going to look like when this is done? Like, he's been out of the line more. He's actually played in his career so far after this next set of surgery he's got to do. So, you're right, and I think it's working smarter in this case when it's all said and done. And just finding out where your strengths are and stuff like that, and working on that at this point. So I think that's one of the things I think that's a whole management thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's just something
Right.
on the player alone. That's across the board.
I actually agree because to me, I feel like, hey, there's a lack, and maybe there is a lack of communication. They just expect these guys to know what to do or whatever. But I always see like all of these players in the NBA. It's like, well, what did you work? I worked on everything, right? And it's just like to me, I want to say, okay, let's sit down at the end of the season. And I'm sure that they do this to an extent. I just don't know what the extent is. But
Mhm.
and like this is like, okay, you want to work on this, that's cool. But like, let's work with your team of like your trainers or whatever, and let's create a plan for you, right? Let's sit down and it's like, okay, these are the things that we want you to do because we want you to be successful. You want to be successful too, but we want you to spend an extra month, I don't know, at the new, I'm trying to think of someone who's alive here, Akeem camp or whatever, right? Or in the future, the Kawhi camp or whatever. Although I think after he's done playing, he's probably going
I
to give
don't
his
see
knees a
Kawhi
rest.
being. I don't see
Yeah.
Kawhi being around the game that much to say. Like,
Yeah, no, no. But
yeah,
yeah, it's I like I want to see more of that or more of okay, if your dribbling needs work, we want you to take some boxing for a month or
mhm,
something, right? Like that's one of the things that I always remember Demar did, and I think it. You're right. It is an upper management thing. I think it's also a coaching staff collective
mhm,
coming together because you can't just let the guys. I'm not saying that these guys don't work hard, but it's like I always felt like there must be some sort of miscommunication based on like do they give these guys a plan, or do they just say, okay, show up to the Rico Hines runs, we'll see you then, and we'll work together then.
I mean, I've heard discussions and interviews and stuff like that. When they have the exit meetings at the end of the year, but they say, "Hey, this is what I need you to work on for next year. I need you to do this, this, and this." Sometimes it
Yeah.
might be in this case, it might be skills related, it might be weight related. In this case here for certain players, they need to kind of get bigger or lose weight depending on who you are. Things of that nature. Maybe working on your cardio in this case or stamina to kind of make sure you can actually play longer minutes. So all those type of things I think they ask them to do. So I think every team does that to some extent. Question is going back to is like, how do you approach it, basically, as you mentioned before? And I think, and also knowing exactly what's your strengths at the moment, which I think a lot of Raptors struggle with that right now. Understanding like, listen, where am I good at right now? Let me take advantage of that. I don't think a
Now,
lot of
is that a youth thing? Because and by youth, I don't just mean, I mean like in terms of anyone under 30, right? Like,
right, exactly.
like is that something that's a challenge? Yeah.
No, I think it's also too it's a youth thing, but it's also a management thing, right? It's like the discipline we're talking about before, of making sure you have the right people, kind of focusing on the right things for the team. It goes back to the carefree mindset I was talking about before. And that kind of like idea of having I guess what you want to call it, kind of a freewheeling approach in this case here, that there's no role definitions happening. And that could kind of permeate in my mind when you get to the off season, right?
Right.
Because if that's what you're saying then during the season, then what's happening in the off season? Like how you got a little one there.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna do it, kids. Yeah. But that to me is kind of like where where the where things are kind of like I just wonder how much of a it's kind of the carrot and stick. How much carrot are we giving and how much stick are we giving? Right? And it seems to be a
Right.
lot of carrot with the Raptors, a lot of stick sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean in my mind it's like I do like the fact that Nick doesn't always get credit for this, but early on in a season, he will give guys a lot of rope to do stuff with. I mean, people could say what they want, but Malachi got minutes a lot early on in this season, and throughout the season. Maybe not consistently, but if you look at the game logs, he was playing.
Right, right, right.
He was playing, and he was given chances. And I'm not here to say whether or not he was given enough. Not today, not this discussion. But I guess my question then is that like at some point it doesn't it make sense that you say, okay, you can play around until the trade deadline. Once the trade deadline happens, if we are making our move to move forward, then shouldn't another discussion happen mid-season and say, all right, we're going to go into development mode, or because from Masai's presser, he suggested, you got to play these young guys, and he did
Well,
say that.
well, I think we had these discussions before that. I mentioned that prior to his discussion, saying that you could tell there's definitely a bit of friction between the coaching staff and what management wants, right? Because it was kind of funny how it played out with the backup point guard situation, right?
Right.
So for various reasons, definitely the management wanted Banton to play more. That's my theory of the case. I think they ended up wanting to play Flynn just to try to trade him. So they put him up, and he's getting putting him out there to see if he could get some bait to kind of move him on so they could get Banton to play. I
Yep.
think in this case here, I'm not sure, but I think Nick Nurse, I think if he had his way, he probably would have played Downton, right? But Downton couldn't get any minutes in this case here because you got management wanting to move one guy off in this case for trade, and the other guy in this case, because that's what they see as one of their potential future development guys. So Downton's the guy, he's the god guy out without a chair. When it's all said and done, now, ironically, he gets a little bit of minutes, and then boom, what happens? He's back there, down there again. I felt for him when that deal went, but I got the rationale behind it. Because I think even though our defense at some point was our weakness, I think he's trying to find. I think Masai and Bobby are trying to find a way now to address the offense. But
yeah, I think that they're doing. I mean, you look at one thing at a time, and I think Poeltl, even moving forward beyond this year, I think Poeltl addresses enough that it's not a stopgap, right? All respect to Cam Birch and everyone else, but those were kind of stopgaps. Even the way we got him, I think Cam Birch was a buyout candidate. To me, anytime you get a buyout candidate, it's probably you could expect them to be a stopgap.
Exactly.
And so they're not long-term solutions. I remember we got Freddie Gillespie, and everyone, oh man, like we gotta, and I'm like,
Oh, God.
how low
Oh,
is our expectations? I
well,
mean, all
there's a
respect to
name in the
Freddie.
past, Freddie Gillespie, man.
I mean, like all respect to Freddie Gillespie, right? But it's just like he's not saving your franchise.
But that shows you how bad it's been, right? I mean, to
Yeah,
your point,
yeah,
right? Freddie Gillespie, they actually thought was a stop. I measured it. We should. That dude was starting games for us at one point. Okay, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
That's how bad it's been the center position,
People
right?
forget. People forget, and the thing is that going from Freddie Gillespie to Ken Birch, it was like, oh wow, like you know what
Yes,
I mean. And it's just like,
yes.
and honestly, Ken Birch, I think he's a pretty solid player. It's just he's not good enough to give us what we need. Plus the fact of if you're always perpetually hurt or injured or whatever, I mean, um, imagine if we did the trade that we traded for Jonathan Isaacs. Okay, he's not playing.
Right, exactly. It'd be like a week, and you'd be finding out, oh yeah, this dude can't play. Like, yeah,
You
um,
know, it's just wait. You know.
exactly. Yeah, the just wait crowd. Yeah, yeah, I'm not down with the just wait crowd. I'm just like, well, I want to see guys in the court. I'm just like, like, and I think there's a lot of sometimes in Raptor fandom, there's a lot of abstract thinking of what they think a player is capable of doing and the actual reality of the player.
I
Like
mean, you can. It's really fun to dream about what guys can be, and I myself, I do project players. Like for example, and this is a good segue into Scottie Barnes specifically. But I look at Scottie Barnes, and I've told you before, I think that he can be like if you look at the 99th percentile outcome. So I'm not, some people would say this isn't good enough, but 99th percentile outcome, I think he could potentially maybe be an MVP. Now, path to get there is a whole other story,
mhm,
right? So I'm not giving you odds or whatever. He has a lot of work to do to get there. I don't think if you just put the ball in his hands, next year he's the MVP. It just doesn't work like that. But
mhm,
I do think that he could potentially be that good.
mhm,
But at the same time, you have to look at what is he today? What does he struggle with? The fact that he does currently struggle with finishing. I like the fact that he is aggressive and he's going to the hoop more. Ironically, since Poeltl's here and apparently Poeltl's cramped his spacing, but he's
I
finding
don't understand it.
he's
Like,
he's driving more now. It doesn't make sense, but like it works, sure. But I think next year, for example, I don't see why he can't improve that finishing for sure.
I think, and this might be controversial when I say this, but I think, I'm just gonna say it, but I think part of the issue with Scottie is Scottie doesn't like to play. Scottie sometimes gets too cute. Let's put it that way, right?
Mm,
And sometimes Scottie forgets he's 6'10" or 6'9" or wherever he might be. I think
yep.
6'10". I think it's like Garnett used to be like, oh, he's always 6'11". No, Garnett's 7 feet. Okay, he just wants to be, for whatever purpose, he doesn't want to be considered to be a 7-footer. Some guys have got that type of thing. I think
Yep.
Scottie might be like that. Oh, he's 6'9". I was like, Scottie ain't no 6'9" anymore, dude. Scottie really grew an inch just in the last year. Okay, Scottie doesn't say 6'10", and Scottie's probably pushing about like 245 at this point, maybe.
He's a big kid.
Yeah,
He's not a
he's a
kid,
big
actually. He's a big
boy, and
man.
he's gonna fill out even more so. And I was like, and sometimes he gotta realize he's that size, and he doesn't play big all the time. He plays big in spots, but I don't think he's a person that likes contact all the time. I think when it's dire, then you see it. That's why you see him so effective in fourth quarters. But I think if he could get away with not doing it, I think he would get away with not doing it. I think he would prefer the finesse game. And I think that's why he gets in trouble sometimes with little flip shots around the net. Instead of just go up there trying to dunk it with two hands or trying to go through guys. A lot of those times when he's missing shots, he's all worried about getting blocked. Just go through guys, and who knows? You might get blocked. You might get a foul. But I'd rather make that, let the ref make that decision. Don't flip up a shot and then it's like rolling off the rim. And I think that's one of the things that I think was hurt is his finishing a lot. I think the other thing too is once again knowing your game. And I think last night they started off with classic Raptors. Something works and they go away from it. Like the way he was posting up on those small guys, I've been begging for that all year. Every team plays Scottie well a wing. Sometimes they play with guards. Sometimes, and it's like, dare you, please, we dare you to post him up, and he's
Now,
got a post up game.
yeah, now I'm gonna I'm gonna add to that and then give you a counterpoint because I want to offer balance. And I know that there are going to be people that are going to be in the comments and are going to freak out and think that, I hate Scottie or you hate Scottie or whatever. I think to add to that, I look back at, I believe it was Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And he had Mitchell on him.
Yes, you show that clip.
Put the clip on Twitter.
Yes.
And I'm like, and he actually did later in the game, he actually went and did the right thing.
Right.
But you have Mitchell on you. You're Scottie Barnes. Mm-hmm. And remember what I said? I said, you got to take a cutout, right, a cardboard cutout, and stick it next to him and make him hold it, on the plane and stuff. Right. So he remembers, Mitchell is 6 foot. Yeah. Maybe 6'1" in shoes soaking wet. Okay. 7 foot wingspan, sure, but he's 6 feet. You're way bigger than that. You're way heavier than him.
You're way taller than him.
In every sort of way. You should be punishing this man in the post relentlessly. There is no reason why you shouldn't. You have the ability. And I say this because when he does it, he's successful. Because I know he has it in him. Because I've seen it and I've seen him be successful. Because right now, that is, I think, his first path to seriously increasing his production.
I agree. I think, but this goes back to the point where I have my theory about he sees himself as a guard, right? And the play he made was a guard move. Ooh, I got the bigger guy on me. Let me see if I can beat him to the net. You don't need to do so.
And that's interesting because it's like, to me, I know he watched Magic, but it's like Magic would stick his butt in the post.
Lord, Magic would have been sitting there just slobbering for that match if he had Donovan Mitchell.
Exactly.
Magic used the ball like this. You just like, get out the way. He used to do that.
Yeah.
Get out here, man. There's 6'2" dude on me. Everyone get out here. Coop, everyone just get out the way, man. Let's deal with this little dude. Anytime you used to have Stockton and they play Utah, you got that switch. Like, just move.
Exactly. So I think, and I'm of the mindset that by next year, that's not even going to be a thing. I call him a point blank because I don't know what he is. I think, I'm not, I'm not here to get into the weird, is he a point guard or not? I think right now he has a lot of skills. And someone asked me before, like a while ago, they're like, well, what do you think Scottie Barnes could be? And I said, if he puts his mind to it and he sticks to it and goes through the steps, he can be whatever he wants to be.
Exactly. And that's the reason why I always kind of make the comps of he can end up being Lamar Odom, or he can end up being Scottie Pippen, or he can end up being Magic Johnson. It all depends on him, on how he wants to approach the game. That's what it comes down to. And that's not no shade, because even someone like Lamar Odom.
That's high praise. You're comparing him to like the.
Yeah. So for folks in this case, where you jump in the comments when the time comes, like Lamar Odom was a hell of a player, folks. 6 man of the year, 2 titles. He's no joke, right? Like,
yeah.
You might know him in this case for his unfortunate, some of the incidents happened off the court and the Kardashian mess, but no, he can play, man. Believe me, he was as high as a prospect, if not higher than Scottie coming out of college.
Yeah, I actually don't really remember him as a prospect because I went through a period of time where I didn't really follow. I think he was drafted by the Heat, and I didn't really follow him until he was on the Lakers, until that trade.
No, he was drafted top 4. In this case, he might have been his second or third pick. I mean, the McDonald's All-American game that year, it was him, Elton Brand. I can't remember who the third one was, like top dudes. And like everyone said, even though Brand was going to Duke and had a big name and Brand was fantastic, they said, no, man. I remember watching that McDonald's All-American. It's like, no, that dude, number 2, whatever I think he was wearing, is like, no, he's the best player in the court in my mind. That's the dude. Like, he had that type of talent with him, man. Like, so it wasn't surprising that, he would be a team that would be a championship team eventually, because he had that type of ability in this case here. So, so when I say so, I'm not saying that anything slight. Like,
it's crazy that you have to preface it with that, because people are so sensitive these days, and you're like, no, we want more from him because we know that there is more.
Yeah, because if the floors are more, that's still a hell of a player, dudes. Like,
yeah. I mean, and I said 2 years ago and last year, I said that by the end of this year, that like I said when we drafted Barnes, I said by the end of this year, Pascal would be top dog on this team, like undisputedly the top dog. But that Barnes would be pushing, if not undisputedly, the number two guy. And it looks like
Okay. Well, Pascal was top dog last year. No, someone else didn't
yeah,
realize
yeah,
that.
he was. No. He. I said that for the last year too, but I think people, again, were like,
Yeah.
people are impatient and have to remember that life is not quite like 2K.
No, it doesn't work out that way. But like, I mean, yeah,
It'll be cool though.
Scottie, yeah, exactly. My thing with Scottie is I just want to see, I guess, a more of kind of a definitive focus on what he's trying to do. Let's put it that case. Like to me, it's like kind of a little bit all over the place. I don't know what the approach is when I see him come out there most nights. Like you can say, okay, this guy here, I can see he's trying to work on, he's attacking the hoop. That's his thing. Another guy might be he's the post playing. That's his thing, working from the post. Another guy, I'm going to cut off of guys and I'm going to work. That's my thing to get my game off. Right. I don't know what Scottie's. I think I know what Scottie's game should be to get his game off. I don't know if Scottie knows what to do to get his game off at times in this case. That's where I find it. Where it's just like a bit of like it's a bit of a jumble, just depending on what you get each night.
He may know, and I think he does know, but I think to your other point, he also, and this goes back to the pride thing, I think he wants to show off his other skills. Because it's almost like
a vanity project.
Yeah, well, no. But I mean, but in a sense, it's like, yeah, like if you, people came in, he can't shoot. Right. And it's like, okay, I gotta show I can do it. And right. You even hear some of his, the people who praise him the most, and people don't think that I do, but I really do rock with him. I really do. How many times have I said even this conversation, I said he could be an MVP. Mm-hmm. And yet, I think it's fair to say, okay, and this goes back to my suggestion for developing guys in general within a season even, is that within a season, you get halfway through a season, at some point it's like, okay, this works, let's spam it.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't understand, like, if something works.
That's my point. Like, I mean, I think I talked to you about this. We're 60 games in.
Yeah.
And we still don't know exactly, what's an effective way for this offense to actually figure out how to kind of like, trigger the Scottie Barnes we all want to see.
And I'll be fair here. I'll go the same with Fred. Hey, Fred, if you're shooting against a 7-foot guy, don't do it.
I said before, Fred's gonna be Fred, man. Like, I'm sorry, Fred. Like, Warren folks last night, they were out there with the pitchfork, and I said, like, hey, man, my mindset is he is what he is, for better or for worse. That's the way his mindset is. That's the way he is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I won't get into. We don't have the time to get into a Fred conversation.
No, that's cool. But, I don't think there's one necessary, because I think
no, but yeah, it's one of those. You're right. I think the thing is with the Fred, it's as simple as this. We didn't trade him. He's here for now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's going to be here next year, but while he's here, I mean, we'll see what happens, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure. He's a very good player that we need in this case here to shoot well. I mean, we're not going to go anywhere. So you're right. I mean, but I guess like I don't really.
You can't be. I mean, what are you going to do? Go on the game? No, you. Sorry, sir. You can't step into the game today.
Right. The old saying goes, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Like
sit you down. We're going to play Joe Wieskamp.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Let me start with acquisition. It makes even less sense now. But yeah. But you want to move on to
yeah. So with that being said, we're just gonna end this segment. We're gonna have a part 2 of this conversation. But for us, for you guys, it might be a separate day. But for us, it'll be the same day. So I'm gonna end this. Again, hopefully you liked the conversation. We definitely have to have more of these for sure. And if anyone wants to see more of them, put it in the comments down below. And also, like I said, go check out his information handles. So yeah, okay.